Welcome back! It is NinjaBot Painting. It is time to finish out all of our X-Force that are currently available with Domino. Now, this model, we had to do a couple things a little differently, and I'll get into that as we go. It proved to be a little tougher than I'm used to, so this model can be a little deceiving in how tricky it can be. So, just like usual, we're going to start with getting all the blacks with our nice soft black from German Gray. It is, as always, the best black for these kind of clothes where you need it to be black, but you don't want it to be necessarily midnight black. This is a fantastic opportunity while we're getting this base color down for me to remind you to hit the like, hit the subscribe. It really does help. Again, this is a not-for-profit channel, so the only motivations that we get here are getting to see the fans and people who enjoy the content. So if you've got a comment, even if it's just saying that I'm awful at this and I shouldn't do it, I'd appreciate it. It helps the algorithm, it helps motivate us to do this. So, let's get into what happened here, because as you can kind of see, her face is already slightly painted. So this is one of those rare instances where I'm not actually going to show you what I did wrong. I'm just going to show you what I did to fix it, because this was one of those ones where everything I tried just did not want to work. Now, it's hard to tell in the picture, but in real life, the gray sear and the cold white that I used on her face actually turned her face blue. Turned it a very pale blue, but a very distinctly blue. It looks whiter here on camera, but trust me, it looked blue, and it was making me absolutely crazy. So what we're going to do in one of our next steps is we're going to show you a different way to do her face that actually worked out properly, so we'll get to that in just a minute. So thank you for stopping in again. Let's take a look here. So we're going to go through and get this German black on pretty much everything. Domino doesn't have a ton of color to her, so where we're going to get our details are going to come from making that blue pop and doing our best to create different layers of black. So we're going to have our soft black here with the German Gray. We're going to get some darker blacks as we go, and what that's going to do is it's going to give us some depth without a whole lot of color palette to do our depth with. Alright, so let's start working on this terrible looking face and seeing if we can't get it looking better. So we're going to use the cold white, and we're just going to do straight 100% white, because it's just the colors I have aren't working right, and this is driving me crazy. So we're going to go in and we're going to use 100% white. The problem with Domino and her incredibly pale skin really comes down to this white and black combination that she's got going on, and that just gives you so little room for error. So what you have to do is you really have to remember to be patient, do a little bit, come back, do a little bit more. If you feel yourself getting frustrated with it, walk away. I definitely had to walk away from this one. This is one of the few times since I've been doing Marvel Crisis models that I simply was like, that's it. If I don't take a break, I'm going to hurl this thing through the window. So don't feel like you have to do it all in one setting. Just work on it a little bit at a time. Alright, so this part. Now this part is a little tricky because, again, we're going to go black on our pretty white that we just did, and it's going to take a steady hand and a lot of patience. Prop your hands up, prop your fingers onto each other, make sure that you have as much control of this brush as you possibly can. You want to limit the amount of motion in your hand so that as little of your hand is moving as possible so that you have the most control, and just do a small bit at a time. Now I'm going to do my best to get this on film for you, but it made it really difficult to actually do it while I'm taking a picture of it for you. But we're going to start to block out that circle that makes up the black part of her face. We're also going to go in and put a pupil in there, and we're going to fix her lipstick and her eyebrow. Just a quick little slash, and bam, you've got a pupil. That's going to work fine. Get her lip while we're here. With lips, focus on the bottom lip and kind of let the upper lip catch it as it goes. Then I'm going to take the black and I'm going to water it down pretty substantially. So this is probably 50% water, 50% paint, maybe even 75-25. Normally I wouldn't try to give you recipes like this for a simple tutorial, but this really ended up being something I had to do here. So I'm going to go through and I'm just going to put that little bit of paint into her eye socket. And what that's going to do is that's going to darken the area underneath her eyelids. And with that being darkened a little bit, it's going to make it a whole lot easier for us to actually be able to see all the work you put into doing her eye. A little bit of dark underneath a white eye really helps it pop so that you can see your pupil work. Now at this point, we're just going to layer in our blue. It's really, thankfully, it gets much easier now that the face is pretty well done. So it's just layering in a nice even coat of that blue. Make sure that your paint is nice and thin, and just kind of follow the outlines within the model, and you can kind of clearly see where it needs to go. To add just a little bit more visual interest, once I get these blues blocked in on the sides here, I'm going to go in and get a little bit of her hair to be blue too. I apologize, we're having some camera focusing issues here. I tried to cut out as much of it as I could, but I still want you to actually see what's happening. Even if it is a little blurry, it's better than not being able to see it at all. And a little bit right on that strand of hair, just to give us a little bit more blue to stand out. Let's take just a second out and talk about black. So, Abbadon Black by Citadel is what I call a dark black. Now, unlike the German gray, which is fantastic for leather or for fabric that is black, dark black, which you're going to notice here because you're going to be able to see the difference once you see the two colors right next to each other, is really good for black leather straps or bands. Within the superhero genre, there's a lot of banded on guns and side pouches and accessories. And this dark black is perfect for those because it has kind of a leathery look to it. And when it's paired with the German black, or the German gray, excuse me, it really helps give the definition between the two materials. So it looks like they're two separate materials. And in Domino's case, this is invaluable because the model only has a couple of base colors in it. So we really want to give a way for you to be able to visually tell what you're looking at. And the way we're going to do that with this model is we're going to use this more dark, pure black for all the straps, for the guns, for the holsters, all these little accessories that she's got all over her model. We're going to do the first wash. Now, Drakenhof Nightshade is one of my absolute favorite washes by Citadel. It is this beautiful dark blue, and what it does is it's going to give just the slightest blue tint to the soft black. It's going to give a very light blue tint to the dark black. It's going to tint down the blue to make it more subdued. So that way when we put a little bit more of that Thousand Sun blue on it later, it's really going to help it pop for its little spot here. And since the blacks, the blue are all in the same kind of spectrum, we're going to go ahead and just wash everything. We're going to wash everything except that white skin. For the love of God, don't touch the white skin with this. You will spend all day trying to fix that. So take your time and be careful and just get in all the nooks and crannies. Since it's a wash, you can be a little sloppy with it. Just get real tight with your brush and your technique when you get close to that white, because again, you do not want to have to go over that. I promise you that. Get everything washed up real good. Let it dry all the way. You must let it dry 100% before you go to the next step. Alright, so I try really hard to make this channel as user-friendly and as new-friendly as I possibly can. So I try not to make you mix colors any more than I have to. But the only way to do this right is to mix the German gray with the dark sea gray, because you need a lighter black that's still in that black family to do these highlights. There's just not any good way to get around doing it like that. So go ahead and mix the two, roughly 50-50. I try not to give you any recipes other than 50-50. And go ahead and start applying the highlights. Now we're going to dry brush this on, but we are going to focus in on a couple of spots where light would clearly be hitting her from the top down. Her thighs, her knees, her toes, the top of her breasts, and ironically, this particular model has her butt pushed out, almost further than any other part of her backside. So her butt needs a decent highlight too, because it's literally sticking out past the rest of her body. So we've got to make sure that it looks like light's coming off that. So we're going to get to work. We're going to make sure that we get our bands. We're going to make sure we get our shoulders, our hands, especially as you get around the trigger fingers, you want to make sure that you highlight that real well so it's nice and visible from a small distance. And we'll get her back and her back side all covered up and looking good, and we'll move on once we finish that. Take your time. If you're noticing that no paint's coming on, just put some more paint on it, then wipe most of it off. Just a nice easy dry brush like we've done in every other video, like you've learned from every other painter everywhere. These are wonderful base level techniques, and you really will get your money's worth out of them, I promise. With that all looking good and spiff and shiny and ready to go, we're going to go back to our Thousand Sun blue, and we're going to touch up that blue. Now in this particular model, the blue really is the standout color, since everything is black and gray except for her skin tone. So it's really important that we go back and we put the blue back in there so that it's nice and bright and vibrant. And what you'll see almost right away is as soon as we start applying that blue back to it, it just wakes that color back up and it becomes nice and visible again. So just go through very carefully. Try not to get the edges that we just washed down, so you're only touching the middle and close to the edge, but there's always a little bit of edge between your color and your shade, or when you've dulled the color down with your wash or shade or what have you. So just try to get the middle of it and trust that once it dries, it's going to have a beautiful radiance between the brighter color that you just had and the darker color that we just washed. since we're only using one wash and the same layer color that we used prior to the wash, it makes it real simple. There's no mixing of colors. It's just applying the base color back over it, and you get a wonderful little transition of color there with very little effort, so it's very accessible to anybody. It's nice and easy to do. You know, anybody of any skill level can jump right in and handle this, and they're going to have wonderful results that they can be really proud of. Alright, believe it or not, you are almost done. So next we're going to take our cold white and we're going to paint all of the explosion and the bottom of the rock, because we're going to do this explosion a little differently than we did the previous explosions for the other people. So get a decent coat on there. If some of your base is still showing out of it, that's fine. But you know, you want to get it covered as best you can. If you want to do 2 layers, that's fine. The more white it is, the easier the next step will be. Next up, we're going to use Cassadori Yellow. Now, you're going to get almost all of the explosion and underneath that rock with this color. This is going to turn our white into a beautiful yellow in one easy step that is going to give you a smooth, solid yellow, and you will not need to do multiple steps to get. And if you've ever tried to paint a smooth yellow, you know that yellow can be one of those colors that occasionally just does not want to act right. And this is going to bypass all that and make it nice and simple for us. Alright, and with that mostly dried, I'm going to go ahead and put the silver details in while we wait. We'll use our gunmetal color, and this is just a nice, simple, slow process. You do not want to rush this. You put so much work into all these other colors that you don't want to ruin it now by hitting it with some bright silver. So just go through one dot at a time, one latch at a time, one buckle at a time, and just gently put those little bits of silver in. You're going to do fine. Alright, so now we're going to take Fugen Orange, and what we're going to do is we're going to go to the deepest parts of our explosion and add the wash there. We're going to try really hard not to touch the higher points of the explosion if we can. If you do touch some of them, it's fine because it's going to give it kind of a blended look, but you really want to aim for the bulk and the deepest valleys of the explosion for this part. Our goal here will be to create a two-tone for the explosion where it looks like it's coming from a warm orange to almost a bright yellow, and then we'll add some stone color right towards the end. So just go through and kind of patch that in all the various places. Make sure you get underneath the rock too. So next we're going to take our cold white and we're just going to paint some of the rocks and some of the tips of the explosions. We're going to go in just a minute and put the gray color on them. So this is really just so that when we apply the gray, there's still just a touch of white between the yellow and the gray of the stone. So just do this wherever you feel like you want to do it. A little, a lot, either is fine. Now we go back to our friend the Dark Sea Gray. We're going to go ahead and do the base as well as the rocks that all of these explosions are shooting off in every direction. As always, we're going to start with the base with just a nice even layer of the Dark Sea Gray, and then with this particular model we're also going to go in and paint some of these more obvious stone pieces in the explosion, get them looking like rocks flying out instead of right now where they look like little white specks flying out. It's going to work, it's going to be great. We're going to go in and put just a quick little line of the sea gray across the holster just to help the holster pop just a little bit more than its surrounding areas. And just like all the other bases, put a null oil gloss layer all across the stone. We're going to go ahead and put that into the explosion too. The little bit of black in the other colors is going to help the separation between the colors and the stones pop and give the stones some texture. It's going to be great. Alright, next up we're going to finish off our trademark X-Force bases with the Drakenhof Nightshade blue. We're also going to go ahead and get the rock that she's surfing on so it kind of matches the ground. We're going to go ahead and do her boots and her gloves with this as well. What it'll do is it'll help create a little more contrast between all the different blacks that she's got going on. You may not be able to identify that the black is now a little more blue when you're looking at it without looking at it under a lot of light and real specifically. But what you will be able to identify is that the black is different. And that little bit of extra contrast is just going to help us have a little more visual interest in a model that has so much black on it that it's nice to be able to give it a couple of variations to help it stand out a little bit and look a little better. Last but certainly not least, we're going to use our game color black, and we are going to rim this base in black just like all the other X-Force. Once you finish this, let it dry, hit it with that dull coat to seal it in so that you can actually play with these models and pick them up without having to worry about the paint chipping off or any damage that your fingers might do. And you have completed another Marvel Crisis Protocol X-Force themed model. You've done a great job, and if you've been following along for all the other ones, you now have all the models that are currently available for X-Force all painted up in the same color scheme. So when you put them all together, you're going to have a fantastic looking squad. I can't guarantee you it'll win a match for you, but I can guarantee you that it'll look sharp. So thank you again for stopping by. I hope you've had a good time. I hope that your own models are coming along well and you're achieving all of your goals. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your efforts. I hope that you're being kind to yourself, because it is a hard world and it's easy to forget to be kind to ourselves. So be kind to each other, be kind to yourself, and have a fantastic day.